Simplifying a fraction. Before we can talk about simplifying a fraction, there are a few key phrases we need to go over, in particular common factors and simplest form. A common factor between two numbers is a number that divides both numbers. Sometimes we say common divisor instead of common factor because it makes a little bit more sense. So for instance, 5 is a common factor of 10 and 15 because 10 is divisible by 5. If you do 10 divided by 5, you get a nice number, you get 2. And 15 is divisible by 5, so 15 divided by 5 gives me 3. So 5 is a common factor of 10 and 15. The other idea we have here is simplest form. Simplest form is going to be when the numerator and denominator of a fraction have only 1 as a common factor. So for instance, talking about simplest form, 5 over 6 is in simplest form because the only common divisor they have, the only common factor they have is 1. That's the only number that will nicely divide 5 and nicely divide 6. 4 over 6, on the other hand, is not in simplest form. And the reason that it's not in simplest form is because 4 is divisible by 2. So 4 divided by 2 is 2. And 6 is also divisible by 2. They have a common factor of 2. So if a fraction has a numerator and denominator that have a common factor, for instance, 4 over 6 has a common factor of 2, then we need to simplify the fraction. Let's talk about how to do that. Write the fraction 16 over 40 in simplest form. So you'll notice that 16 over 40 is not in simplest form, and you might be able to think of a few numbers off the top of your head that divide both 16 and 40. And there's different ways to approach this problem. So I'm going to go ahead and write 16 over 40. One thing you need to know is that one of the math things we can do is divide the numerator and denominator of a fraction by the same number, and the fraction will remain the same. So let's say, for instance, I notice that 16 is divisible by 2 and 40 is divisible by 2. I could divide the numerator and denominator both by 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8, and then 40 divided by 2 is 20. I ask myself now, is this in simplest form? But I notice 8 and 20, I can divide both of those numbers by 2. They have a common factor of 2. So I'm going to divide both of those numbers once again by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 20 divided by 2 is going to be 10. I ask myself another time, are we in simplest form? The answer is no. We can still go a little further because 4 and 10 they both have a common factor of 2. So we'll do 2 again. 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. At this point in time, 2 and 5 do not have any common factors, so 16 over 40, its simplest form is 2 over 5. You might ask yourself, is that the only way I could have got that answer? And no, in fact, you could have got this answer a lot quicker if you had seen that 16 and 40 were both multiples of 8. So if in the very beginning instead I had said, hey, I know that 16 is divisible by 8 and so is 40, this process is going to be a lot faster. 16 divided by 8 is 2 and 40 divided by 8 is 5. So we could have got to this answer in one single step. Let's go ahead and do a few more examples. So write 5 over 20 in simplest form. I know that there's a common factor of 5 here. 5 divides 5 and 5 divides 20. So if I divide the numerator and the denominator by 5, 5 divided by 5 is 1, 20 divided by 5 is 4. The only common factor between 1 and 4 is 1 itself, so we are in simplest form here. This was just a one-shot, nice and done. So let's just do one more example. write 45 over 54 in simplest form. So 45 over 54. Right away, the number that sticks out to me, I know that 45 is divisible by 9 and 54 is also divisible by 9. So I'm going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 9. 45 divided by 9 is going to be 5. 54 divided by 9 is 6. 5 and 6 share no common factors, so 5 over 6 is the same as 45 over 54, but in simplest form. And that's all you have to do. Sometimes it takes a few steps, sometimes you can do it in one step, but just keep going until you don't see any more common factors. Then you're in simplest form.